10 Sports Central will be going over our next final prediction of this offseason, and it will be over a team that I definitely think could be a big dark horse contender in the 2020 season, and that's going to be the Oklahoma State Cowboys. And this is a team that was 8-5 in 2019, all around a good season in 2019 for this team. But how they do in 2020 is what we're going over here today. We're going to be going over your returning production along with a full preview and prediction on every game on Oklahoma State's schedule heading into 2020. So with that, let's look at your season trends from 2019 for this team. Of course, they were 8-5 once again overall in 2019. They were 5-3 between September and October. Then they were 3-2 between November and the postseason. So a big reason why Oklahoma State was successful last season was because of how consistent they were. Of course, they were 8-5, and they had 5 wins down the stretch. But still, for Oklahoma State, there was no major decline. So that was really good for this team, certainly in the 2019 season. And the big problem for Oklahoma State last season was whenever they would play a big opponent, one of their tougher ones, they just would not play very well. And, of course, they did have a good win against Iowa State on the road. But other than that, I mean, this team was really never able to get any big wins last season. And honestly, I think that's going to change a lot in 2020. I mean, looking at the returning production, which we'll go over in a second, I think Oklahoma State has got a lot of potential to put up some big wins next season. As for your key wins of 2019, you beat Kansas State 26-13 on the 28th of September. That was a big win there. You also had a big win on the road against Iowa State, 34-27. And then you also had a win against TCU, 34-27. And then you beat West Virginia on the road, 20-13. So overall, once again, lots of good wins on this team last season. But the big problem was that they could not beat any of their tougher opponents. As far as your returning production goes, you return your top quarterback in Spencer Sanders, that's going to be a big return. Of course, he had 2,000 yards last season with 16 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. And yeah, his completion rate was not all that great. 62% is what he had. So he definitely could return, or he really needs to improve that a lot going into 2020 if Oklahoma State's going to be able to be a good team. But yeah, either way, I mean, 62% is not bad compared to some quarterbacks. So certainly for Spencer Sanders, that was not bad at all. But he also has to fix up his touchdown and interception ratio. I mean, he's got a 16-11, and that's not all that great of a touchdown and interception ratio. So he does need to improve that as well. But all around, I think Spencer Sanders could improve a ton in the 2020 season. And a big reason for that is because of all the weapons that he has around him. Of course, they do lose their 2019 second quarterback in Drew Brown. He did have a decent amount of action last season. He did split time with Spencer Sanders. He had 810 yards with 7 touchdowns and 1 interception. So, I mean, all around, yeah, Spencer Sanders was the main quarterback last season, but yeah, I expect him to definitely be able to improve next season. I think he's definitely a quarterback that you need to watch out for in the Big 12. They do return their major running back in Chuba Hubbard, and of course, there's been a bit of controversy around him the past couple of weeks with everything going on, and so it's kind of uncertain as to whether or not he's going to hold out or whether or not he's going to play, which, I mean, in his situation, I hate to say it, but he's definitely got to play. I mean, he's a running back that's definitely one of the best in the nation right now. And looking at how he played last season, over 2,200 yards, nearly 2,300 yards last season is what he had with 21 touchdowns. Yeah, he put up some insane stats last season, and it would be his loss. It would be a major loss on his part to sit out this season. And once again, we're just not sure whether or not he's going to even transfer away. I mean, there's a possibility that he may transfer away from the program. We're not quite sure about that yet, but, I mean, if he does play for this team, he would be a huge part of it. But they also returned their second running back in L.D. Brown, so that's going to be big as well. He had 250 yards with 2 touchdowns last season. And you can't forget Spencer Sanders also put up some good rushing yards. He had 620 rushing yards with 2 touchdowns last season. So, yeah, they got a lot of great rushers on this team heading into 2020. As far as the receiving core goes, you return your top receiver in Tylan Wallace, which that's going to be a big return as he had just over 900 yards with 8 touchdowns last season. And you also return your second receiver in Dylan Stoner, which he was another big part of this team last season. I mean, yeah, obviously, I mean, with him being a second receiver, but yeah, he had 600 yards last season with 5 touchdowns as well. They also returned their third receiver in Braden Johnson, another big part of this team last season, 490 yards and 4 touchdowns. And so yeah, the receiving core looks really good, and that's going to be great for Spencer Sanders especially to be able to return his receiving core basically for 2 years in a row. That's going to be huge for him especially. And honestly, in my opinion, if they can return Chuba Hubbard, I mean, that's going to be huge for this team. That's just going to, I mean, he is returning right now, but it's just a matter of whether or not he's going to hold out. And if he does hold out, I mean, that's going to impact this team a ton. But if he does end up playing, which I expect him to, I mean, I don't know what he's going to do, but I'd expect him to, considering he's still in college. But if he does play this season, this Oklahoma State offense will be likely one of the best in the Big 12. I mean, I'd expect them to be a top 3 offense in the Big 12 next season, no doubt. As far as the offensive line goes, you lose 2 on there, and you also lose 1 on the defensive line. Then you lose 1 linebacker as well as 1 in the secondary. So this defense is looking very good as well. Only 3 starting losses. And really on this offense in general, you're not losing a whole lot. Only 2 starting losses. So, yeah, Oklahoma State is a team that no one's really talking about, which honestly baffles me. I think Oklahoma State is a team that definitely could put up some really big numbers next season. And honestly, could Oklahoma State be a contender? I definitely believe so. I think this is a team that definitely could make it to the Big 12 championship next season. I mean, Oklahoma, I would say Oklahoma is a lock for the Big 12 championship right now, but Oklahoma State is a team that's probably going to be right behind them, I think, next season. So, yeah, watch out for Oklahoma State for sure. I mean, once again, no one's really talking about him, but just looking at this returning production, this team is set to have a big season, I think, in 2020 if everything goes right. Nonetheless, looking at your schedule for next season, you start off the year against Oregon State on September 3rd. Then you get a game against Tulsa and then Western Illinois. So you're at home all the way through September. Your first road game comes on October 3rd when you play TCU on the road. And then you play Iowa State at home on the 10th. That's going to be a big game there. Watch out there. Of course, Iowa State next season is another team kind of similar to Oklahoma State, where I think they could definitely be a big contender in their conference. You got Kansas and Oklahoma on the road in consecutive weeks. That Oklahoma game is going to be huge, especially. You definitely are going to want to win that one. Then you got Texas Tech on the 31st, followed by you got Baylor, West Virginia, Kansas State, and Texas in your November. So overall, I'd say your October is probably your toughest month, having to play TCU on the road, and as well as Iowa State and Oklahoma. I mean, all 3 of those games are definitely going to be tough ones. But, yeah, here's what I'm expecting out of your September. I think you blow through your September pretty easily. I think you have 3 blowout wins against Oregon State, Tulsa, and Western Illinois. And honestly, obviously, the toughest one out of those 3 is going to be Oregon State. I mean, Oregon State is a team that I think in 2020 could be very improved as well. I mean, if you looked at how they finished off their season in 2019, they definitely have got a lot of potential, I think, for next season. And the main reason why I've got Oklahoma State winning that one is because they've got them at home. And, of course, for Oregon State having to start off the season on the road, I just think that Oklahoma State is the favorite to win that one for me. So you go in your October 3-0, and you got TCU on the 3rd. And, I mean, I understand you got a bye week in between Western Illinois and TCU. But that TCU game, I think, is going to be kind of tough. I think TCU next season is a team that definitely could put up some big-time wins next season as well. I mean, I expect them to make a bowl game at least. I don't think they're going to make it to the Big 12 championship by any means. But I think with it being on the road, I think that's going to be a trap game for Oklahoma State. And I think they take a loss there. But you bounce back the next week against Iowa State at home with a close win. I think that's going to be a close win, but it's going to be a big one in the process as well. And then I think you beat Kansas easily on the 17th. Then you got 2 really tough games against Oklahoma and Texas Tech. And, of course, Texas Tech, you'd look at that game and just think, yeah, that's going to be an easy win, obviously. I mean, Texas Tech is a team that really has not had a lot of success in recent years. But you got to look at the games around it. That's what I've always said to people, is you can't just look at the game. You got to look at the games around it. And for that Texas Tech game, you got Oklahoma the week before on the road. And I think Oklahoma they're probably going to beat up Oklahoma State in that one. I think Oklahoma is probably my early favorite to really get a big win in that one. And I think going into that Texas Tech game, it's going to be kind of tough. It's going to be a tough transition, especially going from Oklahoma, a game that I'm sure Oklahoma State's going to be preparing for the first 6 weeks or so, and having to play Texas Tech the next week. I think that's going to be a trap game, and I think you lose to Texas Tech as well. And that's going to be the one bad loss, I think, for Oklahoma State next season. Because in your November, you're just going to blow through your November, I think. I think you beat Baylor on the road. That's going to be a big win there. It's going to be close, but you're going to get a win. And then I think you beat out West Virginia and Kansas State. Both of those games, I think, are going to be easy wins. So that means by over 14 points. And yeah, that Kansas State game could be close. I'm going to give Oklahoma State an easy win there just because I don't really think Kansas State next season is going to live up to most people's expectations. I mean, they're losing quite a bit of returning production. So, I mean, you can't forget about that. But, yeah, I think that Texas game then to finish off the season, obviously in rivalry week, and that's going to be a big game there. But I think Oklahoma State gets the win. And the primary reason is because they've got them at home. I'd say if they had to play that game on the road, I'd probably have to say Texas in that one. Because, I mean, you got Kansas State the week before already on the road. And it's going to be a short week either way. But I think Oklahoma State gets a win there. That's going to be a huge win, I think, for this team. And that's going to send them into the postseason really on fire. So your record prediction for next season is going to be 9-3. And it's tough to say whether or not this team or a 9-3 record is going to be able to get them to the Big 12 championship. But I think next season, this Big 12 conference is really looking good. I mean, you got Oklahoma in there, which I think they should easily be a lock for the Big 12 championship. But I mean, you got 4 other teams, honestly, that are in contention for that second spot. I mean, you got Oklahoma State, you got Iowa State. I mean, you could put in Baylor and Texas as well in there, and you could also consider Kansas State. I mean, they're a team too. Like even TCU. There's a whole bunch of teams in the Big 12 next season that really can make a run for that second spot. And I think we're going to see a lot of teams in the Big 12 next season, right around the 9-3 to 8-4 mark. I mean, not many teams are going to really stand out, I think, out of the Big 12 next season because of how good of a conference this is going to be. So, yeah, with that, Oklahoma State next season, our record prediction will be 9-3, and that about wraps up our prediction on this team for the 2020 season. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this team. And if you enjoyed this preview, be sure to slap a like on it and subscribe as well. It really helps out the channel, and I'd really appreciate that. But as always, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more content from All Sports Central. And once again as well, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this team, and I will see you all later.